invites further research, because our idea is to make history and archaeology interactive, make it accessible to the public, and we're hoping, working with the museum, and with Mrs. Gaynor, that we will eventually be able to open up an area using ground-penetrating radar, first locating other parts of the canal where we can more carefully and scientifically excavate down to the canal level. I think, Scott, would you have 20 minutes to get into the hole or not, and out? Or?
Well, the crew out there was really patient, and it probably took 15 or 20 minutes to get in there and get what we needed.
Because they had to close the hole, so that's not how you do science, but we took advantage of what we had to do. So we're hoping that we can actually look at an area much more carefully, much more scientifically, gather larger samples to reach a conclusion as to the true nature and the chronology of the canal, and possibly, if the conditions are right, and if it ends up being in one of the park areas, like in this area across here, that green space, open up an area that's permanent where tourists and visitors can actually look down and see a section of the canal if we're lucky enough to find it in the right place. So we have big ideas, and also marking and interpreting the canal for the public with a series of signs that becomes the Naples Canal Trail, where people can go from one end to the other and see interpretive elements along the way. So we have big plans and big aspirations, because we think archaeology will make a difference and help and aid in tourism, as well as do the science that needs to be done. So that's part of the plan and the idea. Again, I want to thank Scott. Where's Brad at from the city?
I think he had to step out.
We had great cooperation from the city, and it really made a big difference. So at this point, if anybody has any questions, and by the way, we also got a lot of assistance from Todd Terrell, who's standing back here with this incredible book, because the maps he constructed showing the alignment of where the canal should be was very important for us to predict when the backhoe was going to hit it, and that gave us a clue as to where we should be standing while they were digging, because we weren't there every day, but we were there quite a bit just to make things more efficient.
How
Yes?
did you become aware of where they were going to be digging and that there was the possibility of seeing this canal? I mean,
Well, the city gave us a schedule.
Really?
We knew the canal. I mean, historically, historians locally have known about the canal for a long time. There's a flyer here. You can read something about the background of the canal a little bit. You can also read it in Todd's book. But the canal was first documented in 1874 by a surveyor doing a survey of Greater Naples, and then in the 1880s by several different archaeologists who really speculated and measured the canal, because it was open then, and it was 40 feet wide at the top and about 12 feet wide at the bottom, so it had kind of a V shape to it, cross-section. They also found pieces of wood in parts of the canal suggesting there was some kind of control gates. So very sophisticated. South Florida is the only place in North America where these prehistoric technology got to the point of creating these canal systems, and a lot of people obviously don't know about that. So it was a very sophisticated engineering feat that required a lot of control and political control over lots of people, to manage people to actually get to do the work. Part of what early archaeologists and scholars were speculating, they couldn't believe that Indians would have done a canal of this type, so they thought it was a pirate canal, that it had to be European, it just couldn't be indigenous people, and of course now we know otherwise. There's a wonderful similar canal in Pineland that also crosses Pine Island. We had the good fortune of being near the Calusa River for a project where there is a series of canals they called the Artona canals, and we were able to get radiocarbon dates from those that were about AD 200 to 400, showing you how early it was. There's also a canal at Bear Lake in the Everglades area. So there are a number of these canals that were constructed with tremendous labor, and you can imagine the maintenance of trying to keep a canal open, because what's unusual about the Naples Canal, it actually crossed the middle of the island. It was very, very elevated. So they were probably about 30 to 40 feet above the top of the highest dunes, which meant the sand was always going to be sliding in, so they had to construct it in a way to create slopes and a way to maintain the canal in that area. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Was there one main artery to the canal? Were there tributaries? How long was it? Was it used just for transportation? What was the importance of the canal itself?
Well, the canal provided a very efficient route crossing from the Gulf to Naples Bay. It was
just to Naples Bay? Was it just?
Yes. So the idea was that you could cross by canoe. It had the advantages. I mean, all these passes were passable. Sometimes they would get blocked after storms. You know, you could carry your canoe over. But for whatever reason, the native people thought that this canoe route was very important, and probably on either end of the canal there was a major village of some sort, which again is one of the things we'd like to look for someday.
And the reason that they chose the area to put the canal through was the fact that this is one point on the coast where if you're going to take a canoe north or south, you're out in the Gulf because there's no back bay that runs completely over to the next one. You can travel all the way from Cape Sable on the inside pretty nearly to get to here, and then you have to cross somewhere. And actually it may not, a lot of that activity may have actually been directed down a swale heading toward the Naples Beach Hotel and into Doctor's Pass, Doctor's Bay. Thus they could stay on the inside if the weather was really bad.
One of the great backstories of this is that Scott, who's currently a marine biology student, his great-grandfather was the one who was paid to fill in the canal. Parts of it.
By the way, it's my fault. His name was Norman Ernest Carroll, not James Ernest Carroll.
Okay, so we got his name right. So feel free if you have any questions for any of us, you know, just come on over and make comments. And again, there's some flyers with maps and images that show some of where the work was done.